the Pope and the sex abuse scandal, Serena Williams, and the 2018 midterms. I'm Nathan Bynum, and this is Square Circle. Hello, and welcome to the Square Circle. I'm your host, Nathan Bynum. Joining us today are conservative writer and editor Brian McNicoll, political reporter James Rosen, and Kelley Vlahos of the American Conservative. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Pope Francis is going to be meeting with the American bishops to discuss the recent sex abuse scandal rocking the Catholic Church. Here's the story from Newsy.
Pope Francis will meet with top U.S. Catholic leaders at the Vatican on Thursday to discuss clergy sex abuse scandals. The president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, requested the meeting in a letter following two critical events: abuse allegations against former Cardinal Archbishop Theodore McCarrick and the release of a Pennsylvania grand jury report alleging hundreds of priests abused more than 1,000 children over several decades. In his letter, DiNardo laid out several goals aimed at preventing further abuse. They include asking the Vatican to fully investigate the McCarrick scandal, as well as making it easier to report abuse and misconduct by bishops.
So, Brian, I'd like for you to start us off on this first question about the Pope and the meeting with the U.S. bishops at the Vatican about the sexual abuse scandal that's been rocking the Catholic Church.
There was a meeting today. Bishop DiNardo from Galveston, who is the head of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, was in the Vatican with some other American bishops to discuss it. When the scandal first broke, and I mean, this scandal has broken numerous times over the years now, but the last bout of it was with the announcement of more than 1,000 incidents of sexual abuse by priests in Pennsylvania. The Pope did not take it seriously. He said he would not speak of these allegations. His spokesman came out the next day and said, we're not going down this rat hole. We're going to, we're worried about climate change and stuff like that. And it's like, right now, sir, this is your priority. And the American church, there's no impeaching a pope, right? It's up to him to do the right thing. There's allegations that he knew about this and re-empowered the cardinal from Washington, McCarrick, after Pope Benedict sort of shut him down over allegations of sexual abuse. The whole church is roiled by this. People are shouting out en masse about it and so forth. The dark day for the church, sad day, and you have people saying, your church is run by perverts. That's hard on us, the faithful. The thing that we have on them is the American church has the purse strings. About 3% of the people Catholics in Germany go to church. About 1% in Italy, the home of the church, actually go to Mass every Sunday. In the United States, it's about 35 or 40% of Catholics go every week, okay? So the money that they are running the church off of right now, the church is not poor. It would take a while for it to make a huge dent. Church owns the largest construction company in the world. So they won't go broke tomorrow, but he does seem to have listened and, understood that this is a groundswell of opposition, of people demanding answers and demanding this be cleaned up because, I have my kids in, they're altar servers. So they go in the back and get dressed to altar serve, right? They're in Sunday school. There's these work camps and things these kids do where you have alone time with a priest, right? They're not exposed. And if you don't, we have to be able to trust all the priests, not some of them, not most of them, but all of them.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to add, James?
I think it's reprehensible. There's just, and I don't mean to insult the Pope, but I mean, just as an outsider, you were mentioning you have kids. I have a boy. Having said that, it's hard to believe that the United States is the only place where this kind of abuse takes place. I think the United States is more open than most countries. Maybe the church in the United States is more open, maybe less traditional in some places, and there's maybe more transparency. But you have to wonder how many incidents like this outside of the United States have been covered up for decades, for centuries. And so the sad legacy of the church is kind of coming back now to hurt them, to hurt it.
Mm-hmm. And Kelley, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I agree. It's reprehensible. I've been a little disappointed with the media coverage over the last 2 weeks. It looks like we've come back around to putting the Pope and the Vatican on the spot. They're pressured enough to call for this meeting. But for a couple weeks after Cardinal Vigano had come out with his letter accusing the Pope and the highest leaders at the Vatican of knowing about McCarrick, not doing anything, knowing about these priests, knowing about this problem, the media started covering it as a liberal versus conservative issue, as though Vigano had political and personality conflicts with the Pope, and that was how that was playing out. So I think many Catholics are not only concerned, but they're angry. They want to get to the bottom of this. They don't want this to become a political feud. They want answers. And I think, unfortunately, a lot more is going to be coming out about dioceses throughout the country. There's a drip going on. And as a Catholic, I think I'm saddened, but I think we have to gird for the worst.
So, James, as representing the liberal side, do you have any commentary on Vigano's motivation for calling out the Pope? And of course, this is a problem that's been going on since the early 2000s.
Well, of course, Pope Francis was considered. I mean, in the sense that you can consider popes liberal or conservative. Pope Francis was widely viewed as liberal, and as I remember, he was Pope for a long time. As I remember, he at least verbally he took some steps to address this, but apparently it wasn't fully addressed.
No, it certainly hasn't been. It certainly needs to be. I think everyone can agree on that. All right, so I would like to remind viewers that you can submit your questions to our guests through our website, www.politicalsquare.net, or via Facebook and Twitter, and we'll answer as many as we can live on air toward the end of the show. Another controversy this week was Serena Williams' performance at the U.S. Open. Here's footage of her confrontation with umpire Carlos Ramos.
You owe me an apology. You owe me an apology. I have never cheated in my life. I have a daughter and I stand what's right for her, and I've never cheated. And you owe me an apology. You will never do it again.
Serena was watching her coach give her a hand signal.
Verbal abuse.
And now,
Mrs. Williams.
Hi. Many attribute Williams' loss to her being mistreated by Ramos. So I'm curious, James, what's your perspective on the whole thing? And I also just want to remind everyone that Osaka won an amazing match, and she's often forgotten in this whole situation. And props to her for winning.
Right. And Serena said something really lovely to her when she was getting booed, and it shows Serena's class. I'm a big Serena Williams fan. I'm also a big tennis fan. I've been watching it for my entire life. I play, not very well, but I play. And I saw John McEnroe play one of his first professional matches at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. I'm aging myself. He came out of Stanford one year, and he took the tennis world by storm. Nobody had any idea he was going to become one of the great. But he made it clear very quickly. And in that first match, I saw him. He yelled worse things at the ref than Serena yelled. And of course, I saw him live later on, and I won't repeat what he said, but he yelled all the time. He yelled as bad or worse things. He was given a lot of leeway because he was Johnny Mac. He had a personality. I agree, not to politicize this too much, but I agree with some of the things that Serena said. I think that part of this is because of her gender. I think part of it is because of her race. But let's face it, Serena Williams is maybe the greatest tennis player of all time. She's one of the 3 greatest tennis players of all time. Johnny Mack was maybe one of the top 10 men. A lot of people would dispute that. Serena means more to the sport than McEnroe meant, and yet and apparently she had a good relationship in the past with Ramos. And she respected him, he respected her. So it's a little bit hard for me to understand. But based on what I heard her say, I thought his reaction was very extreme and undeserved. I'm completely in her corner, unless she said some things that were not audible on tape, on TV, or there's some background that I don't know about.
Okay, Kelley, let's kick it to you.
I don't know where to start. I do feel like the rules are the rules, and she broke the rules. And I think maybe she didn't cuss as much as McEnroe, but she did threaten the referee. She told him, you'll never operate on one of my courts again. And she didn't say it just once, she said it about 3 times. So I think that qualifies as threatening the referee. I mean, she didn't threaten him with bodily harm, but she's basically telling him, you'll never work in this town again if you don't apologize. And then she said, say it. I think maybe he could have said, come on, you're treading on thin ice here, which he didn't say. But I'm sorry, the rules are the rules. And she is Serena Williams. She is a role model to women and young girls. And I don't think that pulling the gender card is helpful to women. I mean, Martina Navratilova had said in an op-ed this morning, she says, it's not right to pull the gender card. We are better than that. And every time that we're at a loss, we should not say it's because I'm a woman.
Unless it's true.
But how is it true? She lost her temper. She smashed her. She had 1 violation with the coaching. She smashed her racket, and then she threatened a coach.
So,
and
you know how many people have smashed their rackets?
Yeah, and guess what?
They get a point. That's an automatic point. That's not
the smashing of the racket.
Is an automatic warning.
There's no data that says that men do not get fined or given points or warnings or violations more than women. In fact, the BBC broke it down, and even when men play more sets, they broke it down. They said women have slightly less instances of getting fined, warnings, points, whatever.
Because they don't get mad as often. I mean, that's kind of
right. But now you're pulling the gender card.
We should kick it on. I just want to give Brian a chance to
make
get
a couple of points.
To get
One is, they call the coaching. Okay, the coach is like, yeah, I absolutely coach her. I coach every player I coach at every match, and this is the first time it's ever been called. Okay, if we're going to have rules, enforce the rule. Either make coaching not illegal, or call it every single time you see it, so that there's respect for the rule. Right. The other thing she's saying, about the thing she got the game penalty for. That shouldn't have. Other people have said worse. I don't know that, and if bad language, it's like bad language to a ref. If that's going to be a game thing, then it should be a game thing every time. Okay, consistency of the rule. The other thing is, and I know that like all the people who know me as a basketball coach who are out there in Arlington watching this are going, how is he weighing in on this issue? But I do want to say this. As someone who coaches 140 games a year, you cannot know the powerlessness of you think you're being unjustly done and society expects you to take it and not say a word to the ref. You cannot know how wrong that is. It's like no one evaluates your claim. It's like, yelled at the ref, out. And that's not fair either. It's like, you don't understand. The ref, it is possible for the ref to be wrong, not just on the facts, but on, morally as well. I don't know that he was here, but, that feeling is as hopeless and frustrating as anything I've ever felt.
I still have to register a strong dissent. To say the rules are rules, that's just totally ignoring 50 years of tennis history.
Well,
because
they're not straighten up tennis history.
There is no sport. I'm a big sports fan. There is no sport in which everyone is treated equally by the rules and they're applied. There's no sport. And Michael Jordan was famously favored by the refs, and the rules were not applied to him. In this particular,
but what I'm saying is they should
but
be.
It's not human nature. And in this particular instance, she grew up in a very proud family. She grew up poor. We all know her background. Okay, he accused her of cheating. That's why she lost it. Yes, he did.
No, he didn't. He accused her of getting coaching. That's not the same as cheating.
She felt that it was accusing cheating, and also it's something
she's
that does
guilty.
it's something that
did do
does
it.
go on all the time. If you go to tennis matches, it goes on all the time.
But they get points for
they
that.
use hand signals.
They do. I looked it up, and they said
Sometimes.
men are getting points for that too, for
Some-
coaching.
sometimes. It's very
Yeah, but does this-
it's very
is this
I
arbitrary.
don't
reduced
really.
to a
I don't
par-
understand why is coaching. I mean, some tennis person needs to tell me why does it matter if
Right.
this guy flashes or a little hand signal or whatever.
Yeah, if
know?
you look at the NFL, I mean,
I mean, they don't. It's not like basketball where they call timeout and we go talk about it for a couple minutes. You know, it's this, make your stroke like this. You know, it's not. They're not stopping the game for it. You know?
I mean, I was a Pistons fan, and Jordan destroyed us over and over again. And yet, I recognize that what Jordan meant to the NBA. And so, when
Right.
Pistons fans whined about him getting favorable treatment, I was partly on their side. But it was like, this is Michael Jordan.
Right.
She
So
is
we're-
the Michael Jordan.
So it comes
of
down
tennis.
to a popularity contest.
we're
is
going
what you're
a
saying.
bit far
The rules
afield.
are applied if you're popular and you're well
It
loved
does
and
seem
you're
that,
good for your sport.
there have been some inconsistencies with the rule and the enforcement, but at the same time, it is in the rule book. A very interesting discussion, and there's lots of different perspectives. I feel like we got 3 of them.
Not popular, the greatest. of
All right. So finally, with less than 2 months before the 2018 midterm elections, we thought we'd take a look at the state of the race at this point.
Good you, pal.
Here we go. So I guess in order to take a look at the race, I wanted to first get your perspective on it, Kelley.
Well, I think we can all agree here that the Democrats are in the catbird seat right now. I mean, all of the polls that are showing them, at least in generic ballots, anywhere up to 20 or 12 points ahead of Republicans. When people are polled and they say, are you going to vote for your Democrat or a Republican in your race, Democrats are coming out. An average of 8 points by Real Clear Politics that takes a look at all the polls. So generically, Democrats are riding high right now. Whether that's going to translate into a big turnout for them on election night, which is what they need to actually take this over the finish line, we don't know, because Republicans could get just as fired up at the last minute and go out, and they have Donald Trump, who is out there campaigning more than Obama ever campaigned for his party during the midterms, probably against some advice from Republican consultants, is out there campaigning in each of these states where there are seats up for play. They're saying as many as, I think, you can correct me, 42 House seats are in a toss-up situation right now, which is pretty big. And Democrats only need 23 seats to win the House back. In the Senate, it's less likely that the Democrats will take over the chamber, but then again, it is at a sliver point right now. So I think there's a lot of excitement in the air. This is the first time that Democrats can channel all of their anger and energy against Trump in a very big way. And so I think that's driving a lot of this. Whether Republicans are going to just sort of are going to resist and get out there too, I don't know.
Make 3 quick points. One is there's a Economist YouGov generic poll came out yesterday. The difference was 2%. Polls are all over the place, right? They had the primaries last week in Arizona and Florida for governor. This is not a perfect thing, but it tells you what's going on. In Florida, the loser of the Democratic-Republican race, who was beaten badly, it's like 58-33 or something like that, got more votes than the guy who won the Democratic side. In Arizona, the guy who won the Republican nomination had more votes than the top 2 Democrats combined. So when you hear this about voter turnout, voter enthusiasm, no matter how mad you are at Trump, you supposedly only get 1 vote. And so far, there's no proof that the Democrats have much more enthusiasm to go to the polls in November than the Republicans.
You do get 2 votes if you vote in the primary and the general election.
And sometimes you can get more by certain things that happen in Illinois
And
or whatever.
I was looking at the 538 amalgamation of polls. It has 19 seats as toss-ups at this moment.
Only 19.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
that's surprisingly
that's
low
a
to
lot
me.
of.
Yeah.
It may be more than that.
Charlie Cook has 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
There's a lot of
yeah.
difference and discrepancy.
Sabato is somewhere in the low 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mitch McConnell, if you heard what he said yesterday about how bad this situation is for Republicans, but you never know if he really believes that or if he's trying to gin up voters and get them out. I really believe this will be more than any midterm election that in my adult lifetime, a straight out referendum on Trump, and I think it's difficult to know whether we'll see whether Trump stumping in key districts in key states turns out more of his voters or more of his more Democratic voters. It's also interesting that President Obama has done what even admirers have said he should have done several times before, and he is campaigning, and he's going to some of the same places President Trump is going. They're both focusing on key districts. It'll be very interesting to see who can rally their base more, President Obama or President Trump.
So last week on that, President Trump, there was a rally in Billings, Montana, 10,000. There were 12,000 people waiting outside, didn't get in. And the next day in Los Angeles, Obama had a 8,000-seat arena, 750 people showed up. So he's not the draw that he was. So they'll have to do it another way.
We'll have to get Bill Clinton out there.
You know what? Bill can inspire people.
He can.
People talk about it, but he can really inspire people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the enlightening discussions on these three very interesting topics. And let's take some questions from the viewers. All right. We have Sheila Gilbert. She asks, why did the bishops think that simply transferring an abusive priest to another parish would solve the problem?
Their concern, and this is a big thing that we're going to have to talk about as we move forward on this, is that they're so short of manpower that if they fire any of these guys or they actually put them out of the priesthood, they won't have enough priests. I think we're going to, as Catholic Church, we're going to have to think about, what duties can deacons do so you don't need as many priests. Is it possible, I know like down in Louisiana where I'm from, the priest at my dad's hometown, he serves 7 parishes. He's the priest of 7 small parishes. And so like he says Mass on Sunday and gets in the car, drives all around these little towns saying Mass 7 times, So you're going to have to think about like stretching the workforce because it's like moving these guys around. It's not going to play anymore. It has to stop.
But what does that say about the Catholic priests that they're using that as an equation? Let's see, hurting and harming children and evil behavior, or keeping a priest in a parish because we're stretched labor-wise.
Yeah.
I mean,
that
opens up a whole other question.
Let's recruit priests. That's that. I mean, that's what this has to be. Is like let's get more people committed to the priesthood. It's not about making do with what we have because what we have is not acceptable.
I have a heretical question as not only a non-Catholic but a non-Christian, which is there any possibility that priests will be allowed to marry and like other Christian denominations, and would that make a difference? So,
well, on that note, we could talk forever about that. But I do have one more reader question. And the reader question is, the outbursts of Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe have been entertaining at the time. In retrospect, should they have disciplined more harshly? We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I left out Jimmy Connors.
And also, when Rafael Nadal directly told Ramos that he was not going to ever work any more matches that Rafael Nadal played. And I'm wondering if he should have received the same penalty that Serena received.
I think we talked about that earlier. It's like, the rules are the rules. So it's like I'm thinking of this in basketball terms. What earns you a technical foul? And I think like the clip that got shown, Serena wouldn't have gotten a technical foul to the bitter end, but then she would have gotten one.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap up. I really want to thank you for being here. And now it's time for the most underreported story, which you guys think happened this week.
Okay. So I will start off with one breaking today. Dianne Feinstein referred Judge Kavanaugh, the nominee for the Supreme Court, to the FBI because she got an anonymous letter from someone claiming that there was some kind of hijinks with a girl when he was in high school. And so the FBI has said they do not plan to look into this last minute desperate effort to thwart his, now it seems almost certain confirmation to the court.
This week, the Trump administration announced that it was shutting down its offices for the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian Authority, the only access that the PLO has in Washington. They're shutting those offices down. Comes on the heels of cutting $200 from the UN, $200 million from the UN organization that assists all the refugees that have been sitting in camps since the 1970s. Comes on the heels of another announcement that they'll be cutting money from hospitals in East Jerusalem. So I think this speaks to the really eroding policy that the Trump administration has towards Palestinians, and shows that they're really not interested in bringing talks together for Middle East peace with Israel. And I see just no good coming from this at all.
How about yours?
FDA Commissioner, Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Gottlieb in recent days called e-cigarettes an epidemic among young people and announced steps targeting I think 1,300 retailers and other sellers of e-cigarettes, imposing penalties, and especially flavored e-cigarettes. I don't know a lot about this. It's called vaping, but apparently there's a misconception among some younger people that it's safer because they aren't real cigarettes, and although they don't have the tar and nicotine, they're far from safe. So I think this is a big deal that we need to pay attention to. When the FDA went after cigarettes, it got huge coverage, and this is getting buried in everything else that's going on.
Right. Yeah, it's not, they've not nailed down all the health things. The research is just starting on that. But the thing is, they have identified that this is highly addictive, like more addictive than cigarettes, which are more addictive than heroin.
Wow. So these three stories, I want to look into all of these three stories more. I really like what you guys have come up with. Would you like to say more about the story?
I was going to say about what you said is the Palestinians. What the Trump administration has done is they are going to try to do this other than the two-state solution. They are trying to get outside what has been the boundaries of how this has been negotiated in the last 30 or 40 years. They don't see it as productive. They are also trying to turn down the screws on Iran. The theory is if we pull our money out, Iran has to make up that money or lose influence, and he's trying to get every nickel out of the Iranian economy that he possibly can.
Do you have any?
Well, the one thing I would say is, again, I'm Jewish, and I think there's a perception, maybe among some Americans, that Israeli opinion is unified, but it's actually divided. There's a large segment of Israelis, maybe 1/3 or more, who are against what President Trump is doing.
It's a very controversial issue, and we thank you all for watching this Square Circle. It's been wonderful to have our guests here. And go out there, stay tuned to the news, and thanks for watching the Square Circle. We'll see you next week.